So, welcome. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday. It's very much appreciated. I know that our our outdoor weekends are starting to become more and more short-lived. So, we really do appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning for the House of Paint Knowledge Conference. We are very lucky to be kicking off day 3 of the Knowledge Conference with a presentation on the history of hip hop and Islam with the Soulful poet. Before we get started, I just do want to acknowledge the land on which we are working, playing, and living. This is unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. That means that this land is stolen and that it is a great privilege to be permitted to continue to live, work, and play on this land. It is our responsibility as settlers to honor and respect the traditional keepers of this land and to honor and respect the land itself. We also recognize that Ottawa-Gatineau is situated on a very sacred territory where 3 rivers meet, and we will honor the waterways. I encourage you to do a little bit of research to learn more about this land claim. It is not the same as out west where there are treaties and there have been agreements that I won't get into how Canada has dishonored, but some land was surrendered. This territory was not. It was very much stolen, and that is something that we need to keep in mind. I also would like to acknowledge all of House of Paint's funders and community partners who helped to make this happen. This is a festival and an organization that could not operate without public funding and without support from our community partners. And I would like to officially thank the City of Ottawa, the Ontario Arts Council, the Government of Canada, Canadian Heritage, the Association des communautés francophones d'Ottawa, that's ACFO Ottawa, CBC Ottawa, our official media partner, Bilingual Ottawa, Dominion City Brewery, Alternative Hosting, Ill Abilities, Mural Roots, the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition, also known as OMIC, and Produced by Youth. And with that, I will just introduce the Soulful Poet. The Soulful Poet is an Arab Canadian independent artist from Ottawa, whose musical palette is inspired by the likes of J. Cole, Drake, and Kendrick Lamar. He uses a spoken word background and powerful delivery to garner global attention and across North America, Europe, and the Middle East. The strength of his music and creative content has led him to perform at over 25 different venues across Canada in 2020, guest performing at the UN Impact Gala, and the Soulful Poet is considered one of Canada's most slept-on artists by acclaimed media firm Shifter Magazine. We are so pleased to have him here with us today. Please welcome the Soulful Poet.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the generous introduction. I just want to make sure before we get started, how are sound levels? I want to see people in the chat. Let me know if you guys can hear me, and yeah, make sure you're with me right now. Amazing, amazing. So all good, perfect. Thank you, Zoe. So yeah, this presentation is going to be more of a talk and discussion. Rather than like a professor, because by no means am I a master or professor in either hip hop or Islam, but I do happen to be an artist who is Muslim. So I do have a lot to share and a lot to speak on with regards to the topic. So yeah, so if ever there's any question, any sort of input, any sort of piece, there will be parts where I'd like you guys to interact with me on the chat, and then later on we can get into some Q&As and whatnot. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. It's truly an honor to be here. Thank you so much to House of Paint for having me. And yeah, this is the first time ever that in my experience as an artist who's Muslim, where the conversation on the origins of hip hop within Islam is being talked about, because a lot of the times we talk about the origins of Islam and hip hop, because as I'm sure a lot of hip hop heads and those who are who have tuned into the progression of hip hop through the 90s are noticing that Islam indeed has a role in hip hop, but no one really has ever talked about the way hip hop has a role in Islam. Um, so we're sort of breaking new grounds and breaking new waters, and it's an honor for me to be able to put this together for you guys and share it. So without further ado, we'll get into the first slide, and then as we go on, I'll ask questions and we'll engage. So let's do this. So, whoopsie, there we go, perfect. So I'd like to start off the presentation with a Quranic verse. So the Quran is the holy book in Islam, and it says, "Verily, with hardship comes ease," and that's a huge component in Islam, where whenever we're tested, there will be a positive outcome out of it, as long as we stay true to our values. And in relation to that, I found a little a quote or a line from Tupac Shakur, who said, "No matter how hard it gets, stick your chest out, keep your head up, and and handle it. Keep your head up and handle it." Now, the reason I have those two back to back are just to show a little bit of the similarities in what one core value of Islam says, and that a legend in the hip hop game says as well. Just to sort of bridge the gap and give some understanding on where we're going with this. So, in order for us to understand why this topic is important, I got to talk about the prevalence of Muslims in Canada on a general scale, just to show that this topic and the impact hip hop has on Muslims is greater than what we may think about initially. So Muslims in Canada make up roughly 3.2% of Canada's population. Now that was in the census of 2011. So you can only imagine now, with everything that's been going on with immigration and everything that's going on outside of Canada, where more people are coming into Canada, a lot of families and a lot of young people. That number is highly likely for it. I would assume, and I would strongly assume that that number is greater. That percentage is greater. And most Muslims in Canada are either first or second generation immigrants who've settled with their families in a new country. So that applies to myself. And as we go on, I will give short pieces of myself personally, where I can, where I'll share with you guys what it's like for me as a Muslim in Canada, and as an artist, a hip hop artist for that matter. Now, as we go on as well, I will be showing some fun facts just for you guys to know and enjoy regarding Islam, sometimes related to hip hop. But the word salam, so when you hear the term assalamu alaikum by a Muslim, salam means peace. And I encourage you guys to try saying it to a Muslim friend that you have, because culturally they're obligated to reply back with salam as well. So it's a nice little engagement of peace to peace. You know what I mean? So yeah, so Muslims are definitely prominent in Canada, and the evolution of Muslims and integrating into society has evolved as well, and we can definitely see that in hip hop today. So, quick rundown of the agenda. So, first we'll talk about Muslims in hip hop. So, key names, figures, people that we can relate to, just to sort of set the table. I'm a very visual guy. As much as I learn by doing things, visually when I see something, it makes it a lot easier for me to just picture it and put it all together. So Muslims in hip hop, and then what is hip hop? So we talked about Islam, and now let's talk about what hip hop is and how those two can come together as we go along. So I'd love to know what hip hop means to you guys, so that we can bridge the gap between other faiths, other cultures, and other people. And what does hip hop mean to Islam? So the culture, the art form, and the different elements of it, and where they cross paths. The fifth thing, what does hip hop mean to Muslims? So when hip hop means to Islam, I'm talking historically, but when I talk about what hip hop means to Muslims, I'm talking about Muslims today. People like myself and a lot of other artists that are getting into hip hop, who are Muslim. I'm talking about like now, excuse me. And then sixth, hip hop in early Islam. So contrary to popular belief, a big part of this presentation is showing everyone that hip hop was actually prevalent before it became popular in the 1970s in Brooklyn, New York. So the next thing is boundaries and controversy, because the topic of hip hop and music in general and this culture of hip hop has always been controversial in relation to Islam. So we're just going to tackle that a little bit. And then Islamic hip hop. So that's what sort of birthed out of all this that we have today. And at the end, Assalamu alaikum. So I will leave you guys with a few little final quotes. All good so far? Let me know in the chat how you guys are feeling. Everybody on Facebook as well watching. Before we dive in deep into this, amazing. Cool. I really appreciate the participation because it makes me feel like it's always tough. Like I've never done a presentation of this nature before. I've spoken on the topic on podcasts, but I've never done something of this nature. So your feedback and your involvement in the chat is truly appreciated. So Muslims and hip hop. So hip hop and Muslims have always had a very strong tie, especially recently. So you look at artists like Lupe Fiasco, who popularly remixed Jesus Walks by Kanye West and turned it into Muhammad Walks. And that was a big break for him in growing as an artist. An artist like Brother Ali, who's been a hip hop figure, an older head in the hip hop game for quite a while. And then a more new artist in Kevin Gates. All three of these people who all advocate for Islam and are very vocally Muslim. Other Muslims that are popular, Dave Chappelle is a popular Muslim. Let me think of some other artists. I've heard Busta Rhymes is Muslim as well. I haven't seen him speak on it, but I have heard that he is Muslim. And there are a lot of Muslim artists or artists that come from a Muslim background in mainstream hip hop today, as well as the older generations. So just wanted to put that out there, and just to put a face sort of to the faith, almost, if you know what I mean. So what's hip hop? Hip hop embraces a lot of artistic elements, and it also blends seeing, celebrating, experiencing, understanding, and commenting on life and the world. So hip hop, in other words, is a way of living, and it's a culture. Now, this mirrors Islam really strongly because Islam itself is a way of life. It is. It's not a do this, do that. Rather, it's a way of proactively moving forward with your life in order to reach your full potential. And at the same time, hip hop does that in a different way, where it's more expressing the struggles that we go through and bringing awareness um, to what issues we face on a personal level and a societal level, which is where I see a lot of the parallels. There's a quote by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that says, if you're unable to make a change, so if you see something wrong, like if you see someone stealing or if you see someone abusing or acting violent or whatever, the first thing you want to do is try solving it with your words. And that's the number one thing. So before you use your hands, before you do anything, you use your words to solve the issue. And that's essentially what hip hop is, through the poetic element of it, the rap side of it, and the rhythm side of it. So contrary to what media may portray about Islam, that is the first guide of how to solve issues. And that's what hip hop really does a great job of. Now, okay, so I'd like to get some involvement from you guys. I know you guys have been amazing so far, participating. I'd like to ask what hip hop means to you. So you can answer that question, and just to lead you guys a little bit on where I'd like this to go. So when were you first introduced to hip hop, and what's your favorite aspect of hip hop? I'd like to see that in the chat. A few words, share it, and yeah, we'll move forward from there. So for as you guys are typing, for me personally, hip hop is I will go deeper into it, but the analogy I'll leave with you guys for now is Islam is my key and hip hop is my escape plan. So, and I do feel as though in today's day and age, especially with the social climate that we're going through with the Black Lives Matter movement, and a lot of the movements that are going on socially, like the protests in Lebanon, and a lot of the youth and a lot of people are speaking out. Um, to me, that's hip hop, and I feel like we've all been affected by it globally. So perfect. We got community, rhymes and beats, dancing, cadence, poetry. Amazing. So that's essentially all elements of hip hop. That's really well said, and that really hits the nail on the coffin. Um, I was introduced to hip hop when I was about. I mean, I always had like a strong affliction, like a strong connection to being able to be on stage and interacting with different artists, and watching an artist interact with me while they're on stage, and they're interacting with thousands of people at once. Um, so that was always captivating to me. That's when I was introduced to the performance side of hip hop, and that's when I fell in love, and that's when I started researching it. And I grew up in a neighborhood where most of my friends, excuse me, listened to hip hop, and it was always like the first thing. So, and in grade 5, I was the first one with an iPod, like the iPod Nano, the small square music player, and I would always be the one looking for new music in order to impress my friends when they would listen to it with me. So, yeah, and my favorite aspect of hip hop is, mm, it's tough. I guess I'd say the the empowering side of hip hop, where it really gives you a voice. You get handed over the mic and you speak your piece. All right, so we got early 90s, and favorite aspect is beats. As an Indian classic dancer, love hip hop and its music, so different for me. Absolutely, and that's what I love about it is, and we'll talk about this, we'll get into this as we go forward, but hip hop is a really inclusive genre and culture, and that also parallels with Islam as well. So, a fun fact for you guys is that when Prophet Muhammad first announced his prophethood to the people, he recited verses from the Quran and was labeled a magician and a poet. Now, we're going to get back to this, but just a little fun fact um, for those who are interested. Perfect. So now I will have videos that will parallel what I'm talking about and lead us into the next topic. So this is a quick interview, a short little clip that I got talking about. It's an interview with a Muslim rapper and also a Muslim imam. So an imam is a religious leader talking about the values of hip hop, values of Islam and hip hop and where they connect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute my microphone, and let me know when the video starts if you guys can hear it. If you guys can't, we'll fix it. But yeah, just setting the table as we go on.
I'm Wayno, father, a son, friend. You might know me from Everyday Struggle. My host here.
The set that we're sitting on right now.
Absolutely. I'm actually home. You in my house today?
Yes. Multifaceted guy, father, son, also Muslim man.
Muslim. Absolutely. Yeah. If a random person did see me, or like, I don't think that they would believe I was Muslim. Like most of the times when I'm having a conversation and I say to a person, religion comes up, and I say I'm a Muslim, they're usually shocked.
People are generally surprised.
Yeah, they're generally surprised about it. I actually didn't grow up Muslim. Like my mom's side of the family was Hebrew. So when I was a kid, I used to wear a yarmulke, and I used to go to synagogue.
How did you gravitate towards Islam?
It kind of came through like me working in entertainment and being in music. I worked at Rockefeller Records. When I started to learn about Islam, I was an assistant A&R, and I was assigned, state property, which out of the 7 members, 6 of them are Muslim. So I spent a lot of time around Beanie Siegel, spent a lot of time around like Neef specifically, and I learned a lot about brother and sisterhood and just camaraderie.
Do you feel like that was a life-altering moment for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt different. the thing about Islam, what it did for me is like it just sharpened me as a person. Like I joined gangs when I was younger. I did a lot of different things. I didn't grow up with my father in the household. I didn't have an older brother that I could defer to when I wanted, you know, questions or if I needed somebody to help me out. So I did a lot of searching on my own, and it ultimately led me to Islam.
Bella Hadid, DJ Khaled, French Montana, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are all prominent people among many who practice and follow Islam. In fact, over 1/5 of the entire world is Muslim.
When you look at mainstream American culture, you have people like Dave Chappelle, who's a Muslim. People like Hakeem Olajuwon is Muslim. Ibtihaj Muhammad just won an Olympic medal for the United States. She's a Muslim. You have people like Hassan Minhaj, who are now well-known comedians.
Beanie Siegel, Neef, again from the Young Guns, Freeway, Tone Trump. I speak on Dave East. I took him to take a shahada. You know, I used to manage him. So I took him to become Muslim. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know this, but Moneybagg Yo.
Moneybagg Yo is Muslim.
Yeah, Moneybagg Yo is Muslim. I actually seen him and Kevin Gates. I remember Kevin Gates gave Moneybagg Yo a shahada. I met Kevin Gates one time. I walked up to him and I told him, I said, Assalamu alaikum, and he grabbed me and hugged me. Like, he just embraced me. Like, you'd have thought he knew me for 20 years, you know? So there is a bit of camaraderie amongst Muslims and hip hop.
So much of where hip hop starts and just what its elements are rooted in a lot of spiritual and social justice traditions that stem from Islam. It's hard to separate the two, and it's deeply embedded within the fabric of both, especially in terms of Black experience in the United States.
You're muted.
Perfect. We're good. We're back. I think we're back. I think we're good. Cool. Perfect. All right. Yeah, I got to remember to switch back after videos. But yeah, so I think that video does a really good job depicting the way hip hop artists can really connect with Islam from a level of camaraderie and bringing people together. And I will talk about those and the similarities between the two and where they cross paths. But just to put a little more context into what we're looking at, a lot of the most popular contemporary artists, I saw some really popular faces: DJ Khaled, French Montana, in the hip hop game, who are Muslim and are practicing Muslims as well. So I think in every way, shape, or form, if you're within the circles of hip hop, you're within the circle of Islam as well in some degree. Perfect. Now, what does hip hop mean to Islam? So this is a really tricky connection to make from a theological and a jurisprudential side of things. So legally, on the legal side of Islam, it's tough to really to bring up and speak clearly about, but I will do my best with what I have. So historically, there's always been a difference of opinion on whether music is allowed in Islam. So when we're talking about hip hop and hip hop music, there are a lot of people who still carry the belief that music is forbidden and is it's deviant. It deviates away from our true purpose. Now, this is a more old school and orthodox way of thinking. The more mainstream side of Islam is very accepting and promotes music and promotes hip hop as long as it promotes good, and as long as it promotes goodness and an improvement in self-development and all that. So hip hop as a culture has always been about coming out of a tough situation and turning into a positive one, which parallels Prophet Muhammad's intentions and his path. I was watching an episode of the Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj, and he's mentioning how immigrants and Muslims just love hip hop because it's all about the struggle. It's all about making it out of a tough situation and doing good for yourself and speaking on issues that you face and relating to people beyond ways that speaking and maybe even writing books could ever do. So poetry and poets have played a very significant role in the development um, in Islam. So the development of the faith and the growth of it um, has always been related to poetry, and which is an element of hip hop. So a fun fact: the Quran, which is the Islamic holy book, which as I mentioned, is a literary masterpiece containing poetic elements in every chapter. So the shortest chapter in the Quran is a chapter called Kawthar. Now this chapter is 3 verses, so three lines basically, and in that there are about, in those 3 lines, 3 sentences, there are about 28 or 30 different poetic elements, from alliteration to rhyming to what was it, metaphors and similes. Everything is within that if you dissect it, which is, I thought, was super interesting. And it goes to show that art and faith on a general scale really do come together. Now, this is something that I've noticed in my experience, because outside of being an artist, I am a high school teacher. Well, high school educational assistant, so I'm a support teacher, and I work with a lot of youth, and I work in the public board, so I talk to a lot of youth, and a lot of those youth are Muslim, as I relate to them really strongly. And Muslim youth tend to gravitate to hip hop more than any other genre of music worldwide. And why do you guys think the reason of that is? Because if we're talking about Islam in Canada, we're talking about a lot of first generation and second generation immigrants. So it's unlikely that parents would listen to it, because they have their culture and they have the instilled values. But the youth that come up and the families that come into Canada with youth, those youth tend to gravitate towards hip hop before they gravitate towards their own cultures at some points. And why do you guys think that is my question. Why is hip hop so attractive to a Muslim youth? Why would you assume so? Let me know in the chat. To me, I think Muslim youth, in a lot of senses, are always in a bit of an identity struggle, where they got to be the perfect Muslim to their parents and make them proud, and amazing input. I'll get to that, but yeah, an identity struggle with, I got to be a perfect Muslim and I got to follow the exact faith my parents follow, and then outside of the home, they have their friends listening to music, they have their friends exploring new things. And hip hop is one thing that really bridges the gap, because when we're talking about truth, hip hop always likes to preach truth. Some of the greatest artists out there, the Tupacs, Biggie, Rakim, Brother Ali, Lupe Fiasco, all these people who aren't even Muslim, talk about issues that they go through in their life which Muslim youth can relate to. And that's the first step in really building that relationship and building that bond and understanding who you are. So themes of unity and oneness, amazing. Really strong point, absolutely. And it speaks to their reality. Most definitely. For someone like myself, I grew up as a middle class um, uh, Muslim kid in Canada for the most part. My parents both went to university and redid their degrees, because the Canada didn't accept their degrees from back home. Both my parents are engineers, so my mom's an architect, dad's an engineer. They redid their degrees and started working. So I didn't necessarily relate to the the economic struggle that hip hop talks about, but I did realize, I did relate to the identity aspect of it, of finding who you are and making out of a tough situation and understanding yourself. So I think, from what I'm trying to say is, from any perspective, from any socioeconomic perspective that you can look at, hip hop will be able to relate to you. And for most Muslim youth, it is the struggle of finding yourself and the struggle of knowing your identity and the reality that they see in front of them. Now, another fun fact is that Surah Fatiha, so it's the first chapter of the Holy Book of the Quran, rhymes every line when read, not ready, when read fluidly. So I'll give you, I'll recite it for you guys. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawm al-Din. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العظيم. So that in Arabic is the first chapter of the Quran, and it rhymes every single line. I'm sure you guys caught that as well. So rhyming is just one aspect that's found in the Quran. Now, what does hip hop mean to Muslims today? So, thank you. I appreciate that. So that's a picture of me doing my thing as well. But hip hop brings people together. Now in Islam, there's a lot of blessing in coming together. So, for example, if you pray alone, there's a lot of blessing in that, of course, because in Islam, one of the pillars is prayer. Now, if you pray alone, there's blessing in that. But if you pray in a group, all the blessings of the people involved in that group that are praying all come to you and everyone else. So let's say there's 10 people, you get 10 blessings rather than individually you get one. So there's a very high level of encouragement towards coming together and uniting. Secondly, it provides a voice for the voiceless. And that's something that someone like myself and my music and a lot of hip hop artists in the mainstream like to do by talking about the struggles that they face and the issues that they go through. And thirdly, it speaks on relatable topics. Now, topics such as struggling financially, living in a single parent household, not knowing who you are identity-wise, struggling in school, coming from war. The list goes on, and the amount of relatability that can come. Heartbreak is another one that could be talked about. So all these make it really accessible for Muslims today, and which is why a lot of Muslims are gravitating to hip hop. Four, it's easy to understand because hip hop is in English, it isn't slang, but it's direct. It's not as much as it is metaphors and similes, but from a basic standpoint, it is English being portrayed to you and given to you word for word, rather than singing, which would be more melodic and less down to the meaning. Like singing has meaning and there's a lot of meaning to it, but hip hop is like the grit and like going straight on, hitting right to the point. And that's what I mean by easy to understand. Especially for a new Muslim who comes into Canada and doesn't understand English as well. If they want to improve on English, one of the easiest ways I encourage them to do is listen to hip hop and, mimic the words and see what they're saying and see what you can understand out of that. 5, it's diverse. So in the video we saw earlier, the level of diversity, you have African Americans, you have African Canadians, you have Palestinian Americans, Palestinian Canadians, you have people from the Middle East, people from Africa, people from Europe who are Muslim as well, partaking in the hip hop culture and involving themselves in the hip hop culture. So its diversity is really, really astounding when you look at it, and the amount of people that you can gravitate towards that look like you is super important, whether you're white, black, Arab, indigenous, or anything for that matter. There's always going to be an artist who does hip hop that you can really relate to, which I think is super special in hip hop. Number 6 is inclusive. So when you bring people together, as I mentioned the first point, the inclusivity of hip hop, where all you have to do is relate. And when you relate to what's being said and when you relate to what's being spoken about, you're automatically engaged. And that really brings Muslims together. A lot of times Muslims struggle when there are differences in opinion and there's a bit of separation, but when there is an agreement and when there is a common belief shared together, in Islam in this case it's the oneness of God, and that Prophet Muhammad is the final messenger of God. When there's that belief, that inclusiveness of whether, regardless of the background you come from, you are accepted in this community. And that's what hip hop is, and that's what Islam is as well. Number 7, it's educational. And I'll give you an example. When I was about 12, 14 years old, super young. Lupe Fiasco released a song called "Words I Never Said," and I listened to that song, and it's a very politically driven song. And by no means am I saying what he said was right or wrong, but it shed light on topics that I never really spoke about. He talked about American politics, talked about the war in the Middle East, and he talked about things that I've never heard of spoken about in hip hop. And from that aspect, it's a great way to learn about what other people are going through, and understanding what other cultures face as well. 7, it's a developing art form. Apologies for the spelling mistakes, but a developing art form. It's hip hop is always evolving. Recently, we had the cloud rap and the SoundCloud rapper phase, where, or the mumble rap, that's another term for it, where that was a style where a lot of people wanted to engage in that. And now there's a new rise in more lyrical hip hop, with J. Cole, Kendrick, and Drake, and a lot of younger artists taking part of that. Corday, Roddy Ricch, and those guys really trying to speak their piece artistically without mumbling, per se. And hip hop carries a rich history, just like Islam, dating back 1400 years ago. Hip hop does have a rich history, even in its short existence, since the 1970s. So with that being said, having both have such a rich history makes it easy to relate to, and easy to pick up on things that that can personally impact you. So, for example, Prophet Muhammad struggled, and hip hop's all about struggle. So I can obviously relate to the struggles that people face, and it helps me imagine what Prophet Muhammad must have faced, preaching a new faith to people that didn't accept it at first. And lastly, it's inspirational. And hip hop inspired me to become a hip hop artist because of the impact it had on me. It inspires people to do the right thing, the good, what's good out there, and that's a key element of hip hop that Islam pushes as well, to always do good and to always what is it? I forget the precise quote, but partake in the good and forbid the evil, basically. Now, going back to what I was mentioning earlier, with Islam was my key, hip hop was my escape plan. So Islam is a core aspect for myself. And I'm going to speak about myself as a Muslim artist, as an artist who's Muslim. Islam always, the core values of Islam were always instilled in me. They were always taught to me from a young age, and I always believed that my faith was what was right for me. Now, there came a time where I didn't have a strong grasp of what my faith expected of me. So I knew my faith. I was happy with it. I was happy Muslim. I explored other faiths, and I grew an appreciation for what I believed in. Now, there comes a time where you you have to figure out what type of Muslim you are, per se, if that makes sense, or what or how you're going to push good and inspire others, how you're going to do that. And hip hop was that escape plan for me, because I felt trapped in a lot of ways in my faith, where I could pray, I could fast, I could give charity, I could do all those things, but there was a little more that I wanted to give, and hip hop was that escape plan in finding myself and finding my true identity. Now, I'm going to share this little verse with you in the Quran, and I'm going to explain why I believe it's important. So, Quran, chapter 14, verse 13. O you mankind, surely we created you from of a male and a female. We have made you of races and tribes that you can get mutually acquainted. Surely the most honorable among you in the providence of Allah is the most pious. Surely Allah is ever knowing and cognizant. So the reason I share this is because in this society and in this social climate that we're in, A lot of what we're preaching is just for other people of different backgrounds, different gender orientations, different everything, to come together and talk, to come together and get to know each other. And here, Allah in the Quran says that we created you like this for you guys to get to know each other and become mutually acquainted and to grow with each other. Now, the reason I find that super impactful is because I believe hip hop is a really strong advocate for that in coming together, and everyone has a voice. Everyone's able to pick up the microphone and speak for a larger group of people. So, for example, when Lupe Fiasco, for example, was an inspiration of mine, released Words I Never Said, he used elements of Islam and talked about them in his music, and I really connected with that. And he's speaking to an audience of millions, right? And just having that ability is so important, and being able to speak and come together with people is so essential. So that's a key component of Islam and hip hop as well. So that's a big parallel that I find. So now instances of hip hop in early Islam. So this is a big slide because, as I said earlier, a lot of times we talk about Islam and hip hop and how that's influenced each other, but we haven't talked about early Islam historically and how hip hop has always played a role, which is what I'm arguing right now. So poetry was used as a means of preaching. So as I said earlier, Prophet Muhammad, when he first introduced Islam to the people and came up with his prophethood, he recited verses. So I'll put it in slang terms for you guys to make it easy to understand. Basically, the people in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia, a lot of them were pagans. So they believed, they worshipped idols, they worshipped objects. And there were poets who preached for these idols and the greatness of them. And poetry was huge. There were poets that got paid, and they would engage in rap battles per se, just to see who the best poet was. Now, Prophet Muhammad was illiterate. He didn't write, nor wasn't able to write or read, was never taught. And when God bestows upon him the Quran and teaches him how to recite it, he approaches the people, and when he does so, he's labeled a poet and a magician because they didn't believe that he wrote those words. He didn't, indeed he didn't, but the impact that it made set everyone back. So he basically challenges everyone to a rap battle and beats them all through the word of God in Islam. So that's just in simple terms. That's not quite exactly how it happened, but just for understanding. So that's how poetry was used in Islam to preach the message of Islam. Now, rhythm as a way of keeping pace. So there are instances where Prophet Muhammad used drums. There's an instrument called the duff. It's a Middle Eastern instrument, a very soft drum, to keep pace when reciting poetry, and even when engaging in recitations, like when they're glorifying God, for example, in the church, when they sing about when they sing about Jesus and in mass and all that. The same thing goes for Islam. The same procedure. Now, music as a way of motivating. So in the history of Islam, there are a lot of battles that took place in the defense of Islam. So music was used, war music and heavy drums and strings were used in order to motivate the soldiers to keep pushing and to keep defending in the name of Islam. Now, and then there's melodies as a way of calling out. So I don't know how many of you have heard the call to prayer in Islam, but the call to prayer in Islam is recited very melodically, as well as the Quran as well. If you listen to the Quran recited by a Quranic artist, it sounds melodic, and it's a way of calling out and preaching faith as well, which also is incorporated in hip hop today. And so assembled groups as a way of praying together. So I did mention that. So that's the core aspect of hip hop, and competition as a way of entertainment. So early on, there were a lot of rap battles rap battles or poetry battles or poetry slams as early in early Islam to see who the best poet was. And a lot of that inspiration came from the Prophet. When Prophet Muhammad started reciting, and he was illiterate, but still was able to convey his message, and these other artists and poets and rappers, it really sent a wave to the people where they started preaching Islam as well and using poetry to convey their message. So that's the way they engaged it. Now, all of these are loosely related to hip hop. So you may argue that it's loosely related, but in my opinion, hip hop as a culture, not as a genre, but as a culture, is cemented in this. And this is something that has been around and over time has developed into what hip hop is today. Perfect. How are you guys feeling so far? Give me a quick message on the chat as we go. Hope you guys are enjoying. Hope you guys are feeling as though this is beneficial for you guys and enlightening, because it's a topic that's new and is still scratching the surface. Amazing. Awesome. You guys are great. Thank you guys so much, especially those in the chat on Facebook. You guys are doing an awesome job helping me out, making my job easier, which is huge. So now, as I mentioned earlier, so the concept of hip hop in Islam has always been one that's a gray area, and a lot of differences of opinion. So what I've done is I've compiled 3 very influential quotes stated by the Prophet of God regarding poetry and speaking one's mind and standing up for what's just and what's right through words. So firstly, truly in some poetry there is wisdom, and that some is a really important some, because of course we do see a lot of in these days in a lot of the mainstream music and hip hop that sometimes the best message isn't what's portrayed, and that's what's unfortunate, and that's what's getting pushed. Another quote by Prophet Muhammad is, "It is better for a man's belly to be stuffed with which corrodes it than stuff one's mind with frivolous poetry." So it's better to be essentially drink acid and do that rather than allow bad words and bad poetry and bad things through art, not bad forms of art rather, but bad forms of conveying art or bad messages to get into one's mind. And you could see here, even just as I'm talking, Prophet Muhammad used metaphors, used figures of speech, used poetic elements, which are found in hip hop really, really strongly to convey his message. And sometimes it can be quite graphic. You know what I mean? So, lastly, poetry is at the same status as ordinary speech, and this is as it comes to from a moral scale. The good of poetry is like the good of speech, and the despised of it is like the despised of speech. So if you hear someone say something wrong, for example, homophobic or racist or anything of that nature, which is wrong, which we all aware of and are all aware of in our moral compass, that is wrong, and I think we can agree to that. Whereas what is good is good. What promotes, what encourages you to be a good person, what encourages you to partake in what's good, give charity, pray, and all those things. Those are obviously what is good. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce you guys to a very iconic human being who goes by the name of Mona Haidar. I don't know if you guys have heard of her before, but she's one of the first hijabi Muslim rappers, and she talks about her story, which I find super, super interesting, and really breaks those boundaries of controversy. Not breaks it, rather builds it in order to break them eventually. So here we go with this video.
I am a poet turned MC, rapper. That always gets a good laugh. I still rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab, rap my hijab. With my like very pale skin and my like Arab features and my hijab especially, I think people are like, these things do not go together. Cognitive dissonance. I think people don't expect it, and they sort of want to put me in a box of like oppressed Muslim woman who needs liberating by some white male savior, or that I am, you know, some overly eroticized, sexualized woman who, you know, under my hijab and clothes, I'm wearing some kind of belly dancer outfit. So it's like one or the other. And I think rapper doesn't fit into those two. So when people are like, oh, what is she doing? And I'm just like, I'm a little bit offended by your shock and your surprise that like the shock plays into the stereotype, you know? And in some ways that is an aggression. Like I wouldn't even call it a microaggression. My parents immigrated from Damascus, Syria as newlyweds. I grew up in Flint, Michigan as an Arab American Muslim girl, and hip hop was the language. And I didn't grow up with Arabic music, you know? I grew up in Flint where like the cars drove by and you heard what you heard. Lauryn Hill and Erykah Badu and whatever was on the radio at the time, you know? Sheikhs on the DL, sheikhs in my DM, begging me to shake it on my cam in the PM. Sheikhs on the DL, sheikhs in my DM, riding in the Addy like a Saudi Arabian. On one hand, I have the Muslim community who, according to some interpretations of Islamic law, music is forbidden, it's haram. And so people are like, oh, she's not even really Muslim because she's doing music. And then on the other hand, I have Islamophobia and Islamophobes and white supremacists who are saying, you know, she's a mouthpiece for ISIS. She's too Muslim. She's trying to bring Sharia law to America. She's this and she's that. When I have those reactions, I'm like, dude, you're missing the whole point. Like, we them barbarians, beautiful and scaring them, earth shaking, rattling, be wild out loud again. The EP is called Barbarican, and it's sort of this meta-analysis on intersectional identities and how certain people are not considered fully human. They're considered more barbarian, more animal than other kinds of people. For me, it was about being a barbarian and owning it. The song American goes, they don't want to see me as American. See me on your TV as a terrorist. All I want to do is have some fun by the beach, man. But here come ICE, yeah, and that travel ban. You know, white supremacy and like unfettered capitalism and like patriarchy and all of that nonsense, like they're Goliath. And I'm over here with a song. And somehow they find that threatening. Like how? You know, like it's just a song, dude. Just like dance. Maybe it'll help you feel better. You know? That's with what I'm wearing, man. Throw some bleach on that bitch. Throw some bleach on that bitch. Trying to keep it white on white like the ones with the switch. Throw some bleach in that bitch. Throw some bleach in that bitch. Trying to keep it white on white like a toilet full of shh. They don't want to see me as American. See me on your TV as a...
So yeah, that was Mona Haider, who's really breaking boundaries in the Islam and the hip hop scene, especially someone that's wearing the hijab and is openly Muslim. And someone like her, and I see responses in the chat saying that she's so good and she's so powerful. She is incredibly talented, and really is doing great things to bridge the gap and show that, you know, Muslims can be involved in hip hop as well. Now, her work and the works of a lot of people have created this new genre called Islamic hip hop. And the rise in popularity of Islam all over the world has opened and inspired artists who are Muslim to become Muslim artists. So there's a lot of artists who are Muslim, and there's the Muslim artist. And what I mean by that is, for example, someone like DJ Khaled, or someone like Erykah Badu, or someone like Busta Rhymes, or because their content isn't explicitly Muslim, they're an artist who's Muslim. So it's kind of like if you had a plumber, you wouldn't call them a Muslim plumber, you'd call them a plumber who's Muslim. They just happen to be Muslim. But what I'm talking about here is actual Muslim artists. So their content is Islamic, their message is always Islamic, and it's within the moral compass of Islam. So you'll find a lot of beatboxing, a cappella rap, vocals only music. So people will make vocals, beats through vocals and sing over that. And other forms have become extremely popular to the point where it's an industry. I have a few friends of mine who are actually, they're vocals only producers. So they make beats only through their mouth, only through their vocals. And they sell them worldwide, and they're making a living off of that. And Islamic music has been prevalent since the birth of Islam. As we talked about war music, music for battles, for example, or rhythm and all that. But Islamic hip hop has grown rapidly over the 2000s. Artists have taken historical terms, songs, and elements from Islam and have incorporated it into their modern sounds. Perfect. So I'll give you guys an example. This will be the last little segment before the Islam Alaikum part 9. So this right here is a very traditional Islamic song. It was sung when the Prophet came back from his pilgrimage to his hometown, and the people were so happy to see him, so they sang the song. And this is how the song was sung historically. So this is historically accurate. So I'm going to play this for you guys. You guys are going to listen to it. Song in celebration of the Prophet's return to his hometown, and the people wrote the song for him, and they sang it in public, in the like outside as he's walking back home. So we have this, right? So now this is a contemporary artist by the name of Khalid Sadiq. He's a UK artist who's grown a lot over time. I've met him personally, great guy. So he took that song and turned it into a hip hop song. So I'd like you guys to check this out and just to see the evolution of how Muslims have taken the old and turned it into the new. And this goes to show that in the early days of Islam, there was hip hop there to build off of, and the foundation has been growing over time. So enjoy this one.
sang this song when you came to town. How I wish that you were still around. How I wish that you would show up at my door and I would cry to you and tell you how. Trying to follow where you left for me. I've been trying so carefully. I know the Lord, He is testing me to see if I am what I said to be. Follow your way and I know I'll be right. Day in and day out the rest of my life. People in my city, they're searching for light. Yeah, Nabi, I will be making it bright now. Till the day I die. So أيها المبعوث فينا جئت بالأمر المطاع جئت شرفت المدينة مرحبا يا خير ذا مرحبا يا خير ذا مرحبا يا خير ذا. When I saw his light shining forth in fear, I covered my eyes with my palms, afraid for my sight because of the beauty of his form. So I was scarcely able to look at him at all. The light from his light are drowned in his light, and his face shines out like the sun and the moon in one. Tell me, how can I live a life where I can be right by your side in heaven one day? I pray, cause sometimes I get down and my faith feels so low. I'm rolling around on my side of town just searching for hope. Oh, but one thing I know, I will hold on your rope. I know the progress feels slow, but it's the only way to grow. To all my brothers and my sisters, imagine a day if Rasulullah came to us, we would say, what do we say?
Amazing. So yeah, so what Khalid Sadiq did here was he took that original song that we saw that was sang originally, and he turned it into the chorus for a hip hop song. So he had that Arabic and he had both English there. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And to close off the presentation, I'd like to leave you guys with two of my favorite quotes from Prophet Muhammad that I relate to the most is, I've only been sent to perfect good moral character. So contrary to popular belief, the biggest aspect of Islam is just being a good person. That's the biggest teaching in Islam. That's the whole point of it all. And then secondly, and lastly, who's the most excellent among the Muslims? He said, one from whose tongues and hands the other people are secure. So one who speaks well and acts well. So yeah, that completes the crash course, I guess, on the origins of hip hop in Islam. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Any questions you guys have, feel free to type them up. I will be here for another 2-3 minutes if you guys have questions to ask. But it was truly an honor presenting for you guys, and thank you guys so much. I hope to see you guys again soon in person. Hopefully we'll do this again. But assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you,
Alaikum
Soulful
salam.
Poet. That was a great, very informative presentation and so cool.
Thank you.
Pleasure to
Glad you
have.
enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.
Where can folks reach you if they wanted to ask questions or follow your work or?
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I forgot to talk about myself here, but I did have some pictures. But so feel free to follow me at Ali the Soulful Poet on Instagram. You can check me out at the Soulful Poet on Facebook. Basically, anywhere you go, if you Google me, the Soulful Poet, all one word put together, you'll be able to find me. I have my website as well. Feel free to email me. So there's a lot of different ways of accessing me. And yeah, all you gotta do is Google me, and you'll be able to access everything.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure. Thank you, everybody who came through on Facebook and through Zoom.
Awesome. Well, we'll give it a second to see if anyone types in any questions.
Absolutely.
Oh, we have a raised hand. I will unmute you. There you go, my friend.
Peace, peace. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Yes, peace, God. Word is bond. So this is more of a commentary than a question for you. Thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Something that I've thought about much over the years, just being someone who's listened to hip hop for so long. And I came into the room a bit late, so forgive me if you did touch on it at all. But from the point I came in and as you were moving forward, I didn't hear much about it, though you mentioned some of the artists. So as I came on and I greeted you saying, peace, God, word is bond, right away, I'm sending an indication. And for anyone who's been listening to hip hop through these years, listening to certain artists, those words. And you know that they are attached specifically to the nation of the gods and the earth, the 5% nation, which of course represents Busta Rhymes, Tribe Called Quest, Big Daddy Kane, Rakim Allah, even just hearing Rakim Allah. So the commentary is more along the lines to say that Islam has been within hip hop since the beginning. We may not look at it through the times of Bambaataa, but certainly the essence of what Bambaataa put together, peace, love, unity, and having fun. I see that standing on the foundations of Islam as well too. But that second generation, specifically Big Daddy Kane, Brand Nubian, the Jungle Brothers, all those groups who came out in that second wave, Rakim, moving in towards Wu-Tang and Busta Rhymes and KMD, all of them have come through the nations of the gods, the earth, Guru, of course, Gangstar. And so I'm just mainly putting it out there that I think that we may look at it and think that Islam and Muslims practicing has not been a part of hip hop, but it very much has been, and even so to the language that we use. That peace God commentary that comes from the nation of the gods and the earth, and that's one of the most popular greetings that we have amongst us as hip hoppers, right? Peace, peace, peace be unto you, right? And even that word is bond, that comes out of the language and the dialect of the nations of the fives and of the 5%ers. When they talk about mathematics and the jewels do the knowledge, once again, all of that language is coming out of a hip hop, an Islamic background within hip hop. And so as we move forward, and I hear you speaking about that there's this a genre, I will say, about artists who are speaking specifically using the Quran to push a message. I want to contend too that while they may not have been a genre separate, that there has always been a message coming through from Islam within hip hop since the early foundation.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Absolutely. I just think that now, especially, it's almost become like an industry where there's a Muslim artist industry, where for solely Muslim events you'll find Muslim artists specifically attending them. But I totally agree with you. The messages have always been there, and they've always been prevalent in the hip hop community. So, really, really great point. Totally agree with you.
Yeah, and that wasn't to to discontent from this new genre that's exploded by in any ways, right? Because that's always a good thing to see, right? That
of course
that this music, this culture has been able to spread, that people can now be able to infuse their religion into it, and and bring those words and those vibes to the people.
Absolutely. Really
Yes.
well said.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This was fantastic, though.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm humbled. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your contribution, Gerald, and thank you again, the Soulful Poet.
Thank you.
We'll have to do this again next year and see how.
Absolutely. We'll grow this. So let's keep pushing, going forward, and we'll see how this goes. Hopefully next year will be in person.
Yeah. Oh, fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Our next session is at 12:30, and it is for marketing and promotion for Francophone communities. And we hope to see some of you there. Thanks again.
Peace and love. Take care.